welcome you, Dr. Pramod Reddy. So for the benefit of the audience, Dr. Pramod Reddy, a PhD from Indian Institute of Science. He was a former senior director of business development at Procter Gamble. Until November last year, he was in that position. And he had several roles at PNG, and he was focusing on business acceleration through innovation, partnership transformation through business model innovation, investments and acquisitions, alternate business models to build businesses, and business system design and execution. So it's primarily 30 years of FMCG industry leadership roles and global business development. He has also led multicultural global teams with assignments US, Germany, and he was in the last assignment, he was leading business development strategies, multiple Procter Gamble brands for Asia region from Singapore. He had demonstrated experience in partnership models, alliances, JVs, in and out licensing, acquisitions, divestitures, in addition to building relationship with government organization. He was providing thought leadership in business strategies as part of the lead team and executed several business deals with a variety of external partners with variable size, MNCs, small businesses and startups. He was a pioneering member in Procter Gamble's open innovation movement since 2002. I would like to take a pause here, and Procter Gamble has been one of the pioneers in launching the open innovation concept. I've been a keen follower since the day I listened to Henry Chesbrough at UC Berkeley in 2007. But prior to that, even in 2002-03, Procter Gamble was having this Connect and Develop program, where the belief, though they had thousands of scientists working from basic science to applied areas, including that of materials packaging, the intent was to connect with the ecosystem with the belief that for every scientist working in the company, there are more than 200 either equally competent or more competent brains outside the system. So with this backdrop, PNG pioneered, and I'm glad that he was part of that movement. And so when it comes to innovation, now most companies have porous boundaries. The innovations travel both ways, from inside the company to outside, for monetizing various technologies that otherwise would die in the shells. And on the other side, the companies also not wanting to do everything on their own, and they would like to partner with external entities and bring innovation through various routes. Sometimes it is acquisition, sometimes it's a vendor relation, sometimes it is kind of joint ventures and collaborative R&D. So I'm sure with this rich experience, Dr. Pramod is going to give us lots of insights because India is getting charged up with the new corporate social responsibility avenues where corporates could interact and collaborate with incubators and startups. But it is yet to take off in the massive manner as it was envisaged by the policymakers. There are a lot of stumbling blocks. Even in this backdrop, it would be really interesting to listen from Dr. Reddy. What are those engagement dynamics and pitfalls, sometimes how the deals break off, while the intent at the top is to have a long-term strategic alliance both ways. So we are very keen and eager to you, and the audience comprises of majoritarily the business incubation managers. So good morning and welcome to all of them, and welcome you on board, Dr. Reddy, and Dr. Suresh would come back a little later once you finish it for some discussions, and post that we could have some discussions with the audience as well. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, my dear friends, for joining very, very early this morning. And it's late evening for Dr. Pramod. It's 10:30 at Florida. Over to you, Dr.
Pramod. Thanks for kind words, Mr. Dr. Balchandran. And good morning to you all. Hope you can hear me. In case if you have any questions while I'm speaking, please write it down, and I will spend quite some time in the end. To start with, I would like to make sure that I am representing myself today. I'm no way representing P&G because I'm already retired. In case you may have a specific questions about a specific alliance or a business model, I may not be able to go into specific because to protect the confidentiality. So please do understand. So to start with, I would like to give some definitions. And Dr. Balchandran already helped me with the open innovation definition. It is not just a P&G taking all the things in, but it is also taking it out. So it is both ways. That's how we define as open innovation. There's one other definition I want to give. Everybody talks about innovation. I do want to make sure that we're all on the same page when I say innovation. Most of you know, especially any connections with academics, and you know R&D. Research is where you spend money to gain knowledge or inventions, whereas innovation is something that builds the business, helps the business build the business based on the knowledge you gain. So that's how we define. It has to have a commercial interest developed as a part of the innovation. It could be a technology, it could be a business model innovation, it could be marketing, so whatever it is, it has to have that business building or business development related stuff associated with the innovation. That's how we define it among the most of the multinational corporations. So with those introductions, and I just want to get into how those multinational corporations interact with the startups or smaller companies. Imagine a 100,000 employee company with 6,000 to 7,000 R&D employees now trying to interact with a startup with 2 or 3 people, or maybe 10, 15 people. The best analogy I can give you is it looks like and feels like an elephant dancing with a mouse. So it looks awkward. It dance look pretty asymmetric. One misstep by either the elephant or the mouse, you know what happens. The mouse gets trampled and there is absolutely no way to getting out of it. That's why it has to be the multinational corporations as well as the startups have to be extremely careful how you interact and what are the dynamics associated with this, where things are acceptable, where not. So, and that's why over the years we have, while I was at P&G, developed quite a number of principles in how do we interact with this, the awkward looking elephant dancing with the mouse. So that will be the most of the crux of the discussion we are going to have. I will speak to you in multiple angles associated with this. To start with, how do you reach the multinational corporations? What are the confidentiality requirements? How are the communications? Is the cultural or linguistic? And then how does the decision authority happens in the case of corporations? And what are the key watchouts? So there's quite a number of things over the last 18 to 19 years I've been in this field. So we have learned quite a number of things, and I'll go one after the other. As I indicated in the beginning, as you get any questions, please write it down. We'll take some time to clarify those. So let me first start with the how does a startup company reaches to multinational corporations? Most of the startups I've seen, they try to see, hey, who do we know at P&G? Let's get there. First interaction may be positive, maybe not. You may be reaching the right person or not. And so that's a bit of jumble. So as far as P&G is concerned, I'll give you one simple web portal where anybody and everybody can go with their innovation and then get a definite response. It is called pgconnectdevelop.com. It's a one word, there's no spaces, pgconnectdevelop.com, or you can also use the web portal pgcd.com. You can put your, whatever the innovation is, you will definitely get a response no later than response within 2 or 3 weeks, but never anything over 6 weeks. So that's the way to reach. Of course, that's one way. Of course, if you know somebody, you can always reach out to them, but ask, are they the right people to be talking to? Otherwise, you'll be spinning your wheels and going around, and one thing leads to other, one a connection to other, or you may not be talking to the right people. At P&G, we have established quite a number of channels. One is the web portal I told you. There is a dedicated person in every business unit responsible for receiving these external innovations and evaluating them and getting back to them. So that's the way to reach out. And similarly, based on our experience, there's quite a number of other companies followed somewhat similar things, but make sure that you do reach to the right people, who give you the right feedback, help you navigate into the corporate jungle, and help you with the quick decision making. When it comes to decision making, there's they're very similar to the elephant dancing with the mouse. There is a symmetry there. The best answer a startup or a small company can get is a yes. That means, your innovation is interesting to us, let's work together. That's the best answer. The second best answer is a no, because maybe is the worst answer a startup should be receiving. It's because startup has a limited resources. They must be burning cash. So given the situation, you distracting yourself, your resource and time, and then waiting for a multinational corporation to say maybe is a bad idea. So early on, we have learned this painfully, and we have adjusted ourselves at P&G, and we have tried to follow as much as possible, because it's a very easy for a corporate person to say, when somebody brings an innovation to us, yeah, maybe it is of interest, but is it helpful to a small company? Definitely not. So you should be, whenever you reach somebody, if you're having a conversation, please insist on no is an acceptable answer to you. Yes is a great. When somebody says maybe, you better be careful. So that way you do not burn out. So that's the one big message I would like to give to all the startup companies. Second one I would give is a confidentiality. Most of the multinational corporations do not want to receive any confidential information, because imagine a company like P&G working with, let's say, thousands of startups. If everybody says that, you would like to protect your confidentiality and expecting P&G to sign a confidentiality agreement, it's not going to work out. And even, let's say, for example, as a open innovation leader in the business development, I may not know what all these 7,000 R&D people do. I may not be able to represent. So the typical answer is we do not accept any confidentiality terms. And the legal professionals in those corporations are always guide us, give us a one-way confidentiality from us to the startup. That means P&G giving the confidentiality, but they advise us not to take confidential information. Given that kind of a dynamics, what is the best thing a startup can do? Try to convey the message, what are the gist of your innovation, and then convey that in a way so that you do not give the confidential information. The other way to do would be file for an IP. IP, when I say it is a patent, trademark, or anything which is protectable. Once you have that, that's when you should be thinking about reaching to a corporation. So that way you're protecting yourself, and easy to get response from corporation. In that way, if you were to give a patent number, that is sufficient for them to look into, see the value, and then move forward. So confidentiality is something which is extremely sensitive matter in the corporations. They do not want to accept confidential information unless until they are 100% certain that they are interested in it. To be able to come to that conclusion, they would like to have sufficient information through whatever the presentation you could give. So that's the something which you need to be careful and then protect your intellectual property. Moving on to the other areas. Now we talked about the initial reach and the confidentiality, and then let's talk about the decision authority. Who are the people going to make decisions in the corporation to partner with a external party? Typically, it is depending on what kind of a partnership you're talking about. If it is a joint development, it is done at director or senior director level. If it is a licensing, it will have to be at the level of president of the business unit. If it were to be going to an acquisition consideration, even formal approval from the CEO and CFO of the company. So you can imagine even the small startup with a $5 million revenues, it has to be escalated all the way to the CEO or CFO. So given those kinds of situations, you need to think about what is the type of a partnership you're thinking about. It could be a joint development. It could be simply licensing. It is providing a service. It could be an acquisition. So given the type of partnership you're looking, decision authority could be very, very different. The best thing would be for a startup to present your ideas in a way where you do not reveal your confidential information. At the same time, sufficient depth so that corporation understand, then to be able to make a decision. The licensing decisions with little higher, acquisition is all the way to the top. So be aware of what those decision authorities are. There's something else I want to talk about, this decision authority and the reaching the right people. If you were to go to somebody, if they say that, yes, I would like to know, but they may not have the decision authority. So how do you reach the right people? It is good for you to ask in the beginning, who is the decision maker? There's nothing wrong with this. So that way you will know exactly who will be the right people to discuss. But at the same time, you need to be careful not to alienate the people you're interacting with. There are a lot of people who are in between, who are the facilitators, help you with the navigation. Also, they are the influencers. Without their recommendation to go ahead, directors or senior directors may not even consider it. So in that sense, you do need to take care of them, discuss with them, give them sufficient information while asking for who is the decision maker. So interacting with those, understanding those corporate dynamics, who is making a decision, who has had what decision authorities, what are the right people to be taking this and helping you navigate. That is an important one. It is not as simple as it sounds, but you do need to navigate those carefully. So that's on the decision authority side. There's a other element of it, and I would like to talk is stage of the development is extremely important. For example, if somebody had just an idea, it may not be good enough. Ideas are dime, a dozen a dime. You can get so many of them. The ideas doesn't mean anything. Idea with an established ownership, then you're talking. When I say established ownership, it is IP. Or in some cases, you may not have an IP, but you have an established business where you have a brand, you're making some money in the market, you've been successful. That also counts. So think about what stage you are. Is it an idea phase? Do you have a proof of concept? Has it been demonstrated success? How many years to the marketplace? All these things do matter. If it's an early stage development, R&D people may be interested in looking at it. If it is a little bit more developed, let's say technology is developed, we have a proof of concept, then it could be a licensing opportunity or maybe co-development opportunities. So try to go to cooperation at the right development phase, not too soon, not too late. So that's the stage of the development. There's something else, especially in the FMCG area, since these companies tend to be extremely competitive. One of the very first questions we ask somebody comes to us is, have you been talking to others? Others, what we mean by our friends at Unilever, L'Oreal, or Kimberly-Clark, etc. That is something true for most of the consumer product companies. So be careful. If you're really reaching out to multiple people, do be transparent and tell. And then they may ask you, what is the extent of discussions? Are you advanced discussion? Are you in negotiations? Are you ready to sign a contract? Are you in the development? So all these aspects of it, be transparent and tell. And or sometimes, no, we have not reached anybody. You're the first one. So that's also fine. But companies tend to be, once you start working with the direct competition, they try to shy away. But be aware of it. Sometimes, even though you're working with the competition, if the technology or the solution or a service you're providing is sufficiently attractive, then they may continue to talk. So that's about the competition aspect of it. There's something else I would like to talk. Since a P&G is a global company, the way we think about it is once a particular region gets the proof of concept started working, you really don't need to look for a global reach. They themselves will put you on the global scale. Let's say, imagine that you started working with the India business, and India business likes it, and you have gotten proof of concept, you're moving ahead. Then what happens? Naturally, internally, people would like to brag, saying that, hey, we found an excellent startup in India. We are working with them, here are the results. Then they themselves will put you in touch with other partners in Asia region. Once the Asia region, let's say you demonstrated success in one or two companies, then what happens? Then it may reach to one business unit to some other business unit, or within a business unit in different geographies. So sometimes the startups make a mistake saying that, hey, we are working with somebody, but they're only working in India or Singapore or Asia. They have a tendency to reach multiple people at the same time. That's not a good idea because, excuse me, even though P&G is a big company, we talk internally quite closely. Once something is looking good in one region, it reaches the multiple regions within the business unit. Once the business unit it is demonstrated successfully, it goes to the other business unit globally. So there's quite a number of examples. In fact, I have two examples from India. Unfortunately, I cannot name the startups, but it's one startup based in Bangalore. We've been, in fact, I made a first contact 3 years ago, and I put them in touch with the right folks in India. After they successfully demonstrated the proof of concept, we started working with them. First, started with one region. The region expanded to multiple regions, and then went to national. And then from there, it went to Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand. And now we are thinking about that company to provide services globally. Imagine a small startup with 3 people sitting in Bangalore. Now they became a 30 people company, and now they are planning to expand and putting offices in Singapore and the Middle East, etc. So that's how the things will progress. I'll stop there on that aspect of it, and I'll switch to communications. Communication is a tricky one. When you're small, working in a region, for example, in India, more or less people understand. It is a cultural, it's linguistic. I'll give you a few examples about the communications. There are some cultural aspects of it, some others are linguistic aspect of it. Cultural aspects, for example, when somebody in Japan, when you start talking to them, they say hi, doesn't mean that, if they're agreeing to it. All that they're acknowledging is they heard you. They heard you doesn't mean that they're agreeing to it. Similarly, I'll give you another example, interesting one. I happened to be in Mexico working for P&G for 3 years. There is a word for tomorrow. That's called mañana. Mañana, true meaning, literal meaning is tomorrow. But real meaning when people talk about it, it's not today. It could be any time in the future, but not today. So if you don't understand those, you may be misinterpreting and then going in circles and getting frustrated. So try to understand, especially if you're going beyond your region and start working in other geographies, in other countries where culture is different. Linguistic wise, language wise, I'll give you another example. That's also an interesting one. When I happened to live in Germany working for P&G, at one time we started a partnership, and within the first 3 months, 6 months, things are going slow. I realized that it is not going as quickly as everybody expected. I called a meeting and told them, hey, this is normal when you're starting, these are the kinds of things happens. These are the starting troubles. These are called growing pains. After I said the growing pains, the whole dynamics of the meeting was different. I got suspicion and asked them, what did you understand when I say growing pains? They said, as you grow more, these pains are going to increase. And that's how they literally translated growing pains. So it's a cultural linguistic dynamics. So know your audience, what exactly you're trying to say in different, depending on the cultural aspects. Be aware how people are going to interpret and react. So just a few examples on the cultural aspect of it. I would like to switch to some of the watch-outs. Watch-outs in this elephant-mouse dance. Most of the small companies, reaching a P&G audience itself is pretty exciting. They get very enthusiastic about it. When they have a first meeting, they try to overpromise. or promise in the sense, hey, can you do this? Can your program do this? Or can you provide this service? Well, we can do this. And they try to extend themselves beyond their means with that enthusiasm. Be careful. Do not extend yourself beyond your core service technology business model. If not this company, somebody else will come on the way and who is more suitable. But simply showing the over enthusiasm and then saying all the time, yes, it may not serve you well in the longer term. Most of the corporations, they try to build these kinds of relationships, partnerships with a longer term view. One thing is for true with P&G while I was working there is we never work with any company where just a one project in mind. We look at their core capabilities. We look at those capabilities are scalable or not. The culture of these people and their attitude, compatibility for the multiple projects, then only we seriously engage in some kind of an alliance or a partnership. If it is acquisition, it doesn't matter because it's one transaction, it's done. But when you're talking about joint development, you're talking about a JV, you're talking about some other kind of a partnerships, it's an extremely important element that we see a lot of other things. First question we internally ask is, are their capabilities scalable? Are we going to work with them if proven correct? Multiple projects with them. So longer term partnerships is the one which we focus a lot. So that's why don't try to please, don't be too enthusiastic. Cultural compatibility is extremely important. If it doesn't suit with one company, maybe you may find some other company that is more suitable. So that said, I find that most of the small startups make those mistakes quite frequently. I have alluded a little bit to during the decision authority, who do you interact with? When sometimes when your interactions, let's say you're working with somebody, let's say you have an opportunity to talk with the president of the business unit or somebody else, do not forget the people who have introduced you. Do not forget the people who are the influencers. You may not know who is influencing the decision by the decision maker. So try to maintain relationship with everybody who you know. Just because higher authority have your attention doesn't mean that things are going to go well for you. So that's another key element I would like to emphasize. I've seen quite a number of startups making those mistakes. Some other nuances I would like to also highlight is, when you work with a multinational corporation, there's a big bureaucracy, their payment terms, their legal terms. They tend to be a bit arm twisting kind of policies. For example, let's say we have agreed to work with you, small startup. Let's say we agree to pay $50,000. According to the standard template of any such agreement, P&G says that we'll pay you after 75 days. 75 days is a long time for a startup when they're burning cash and it's such a quick turnaround, want to get things done. Waiting to get paid $50,000 and waiting for 75 days, that's ridiculously long. Of course, we have learned it and then recently implemented within the last year and a half or so to make the payment within 30 days, but be prepared and do ask the questions. When somebody says that 75 days, don't simply accept that is a norm and then don't keep quiet. Do ask, is there a way for you to get the payment terms faster? Because you're a small company burning cash. would like to get paid. There are avenues, so the corporations are also learning very well to how to the best way to work with the startups and what are the pinch points. How do you make it easy for them? So there are some avenues, but be aware some companies may make you wait much longer. There's a few other elements which are also becomes extremely important. That is press releases. Most of the startup, moment they start working with P&G, they say that they would like to put P&G logo in their website. Or maybe they want to give a press release that they are working with P&G, etc. That is somewhat a difficult situation. Imagine a corporation like P&G without having any proof of concept or any established relationships, not knowing what this small startup and the people and the cultural compatibility agreeing to give P&G's name. It's you should understand that it's not going to be such an easy process. Have right expectations. So there's a quite a number of times I had to say no to many people when they ask for press releases or putting the logos. Once it is proven, once we reach a stage where I think we've made a decision to continue to partner, and that's the time we should be asking for those. So be aware of those elements of it. There are a few other things, and especially this is true for North American companies. Because of the legal situation in the US, it is a criminal to accept bribes or give bribes or do any favors, etc. So given that kind of a situation, most of the companies tend to be maintain very high integrity. So be aware, like, in some countries, it is not the same case. And then those companies may bypass the laws, etc. See, for example, I'll give you a couple of good examples. When I was in Mexico and then did the business with Brazil, these are the common things. To some extent, that might be true in India as well. When people get into anything even borderline unethical, it could be a disaster. So the P&G tend to be extremely careful. I have a specific incident that happened in India that was 15 years ago. As a couple of people at P&G were trying to set up things and the electrician was not coming. They have been waiting and waiting. So finally, they gave a very minimum amount, 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees as a bribe to somebody to get this electrical work done. When P&G learned about it, both of those two senior level employees were terminated. So anything related to the legalities and the integrity, ethics, most of especially American corporations tend to be extremely stringent on those rules. So be aware of those kinds of things. And I'm not necessarily thinking that, most of the people will get into this, but, I just want you to be aware that even considering those kinds of things could be very highly problematic. So I touched quite a number of things, mundane and serious. Maybe I'll take a pause here and then let people start asking questions.
Thank you, Dr. Pramod. I think it's quite comprehensive. Elephant starting to dance with the mouse to the bribery issues. You have covered a wider ground. So probably from here, we will look forward to the interactions with the audience. I already see one Sumek from Autilab. So the question he has posed is, as regards the press release point, good stage would be when there is a formal documented agreement. Is that so? He's asking that. Would you like to comment on that? What could be the appropriate stage?
The appropriate stage for a startup to reach P&G, it depends on the situation by situation. I gave you an example of this Bangalore company that is related to logistics. They reached one of the P&G employees and then say that, hey, you know, we can do this for you. Would you be interested in? If that were to be the problem which we are facing internally, it is an idea phase. Then idea phase, we ask the question, what do you have? Is it just an idea? You have a proven concept. They did propose gave a proof of concept and then willing to do a pilot with us. And they said that during the pilot stage, they were not expecting any compensations and just said that we'll work with you. If you like the output and what our methodology can bring it to you, know, maybe we'll think about working too. So in that case, it's a very early stage. But most of the time, if you already have established a method, a technology, a service model, something, then you better have IP. The IP to show that you do own this particular one. Let's say somebody may come and say that I have this AI methodology, this does wonders. Then we say that show it, prove it. So how do you know that somebody else cannot do that very well? So you do need to have some way of demonstrating either a proof of concept, a service model, or a IP, something which company owns. Let me tell you, I did deal with quite a number of startups coming to me saying, hey, you know what, we have this magic ingredient, it not only cleans clothes, but it it cures cancer. How could you say no when somebody said that it does so many wonderful things? But what we really need is a proof. So in that sense, what do you own? Yeah, I can say whatever I want to say. How do you prove? Do you have the data, scientific data, validated data to show it? Do you have an IP? So think about, if it is a technology, you do need to have those kinds of sufficient data, or the proof of concept, or a patent, or a trademark, something which you can own, and then bring it to us.
Okay. So one other follow-on question that I have, for example, Procter Gamble has a mechanism, this PG Connect and Develop portal, and I also are aware that your regional offices send monthly dossiers on problems they have seeking solutions. In fact, we have been getting from your India office and circulating among our members. So are you aware of other such practices with other leading companies wanting to engage with startups? So I know HP has a similar portal, and Cisco, I think acquisition is their main strategy. And so if you could throw some light on other best practices, how the incubation managers can facilitate interaction with the multinational companies.
Yeah, so there are multiple ways multinational corporations try to access innovations from the startups in the small companies. One, P&G has taken a method where we send our briefs. That means what P&G currently facing, so that they spread it as widely as possible, so that we may get somebody who might have a potential solution to reach us. That's one way. And then we have a portal we open, and then we also say that, hey, please reach us, if you know somebody, etc. P&G, what it does not do is we do not have any corporate fund to invest. For example, Unilever, L'Oreal have a corporate investment funds where corporate venture funds, where they, for example, take a Sequoia or a Bloom or some other venture capital firms in India. Unilever has, $50 to $100 million investment in India alone. And what they do is they participate in those funds. When the venture capitals people get access to all the startups, they will also be able to see it. They may be able to fund it. And that way they monitor what the progress of this startup is. But P&G does not operate that way. We do not have a venture capital funds. So Unilever taken a slightly different model. And some other companies also participate, works with incubators and accelerators. So mostly the accelerators pitch to the multinational corporations that, hey, we have in our portfolio around 150 to 200 startups, and we'll give you preferential access to be able to see them. And then in that sense, accelerators get some subscription from corporations. So that's subscription model, they pay in a monthly $30,000, $40,000, etc. So the subscription model, working with accelerators, participating in the venture capital funds, getting the need briefs. So among those, P&G prefers sharing our need briefs so that no one directly reach out to the startups. So those are a few models. There's some other models where we do work with venture capital. Venture capital people, when they fund it, what is their interest? Their interest is to get the best return on their money, right? And so they themselves reach out to corporations saying that, we have this company, would it be of interest to you? We are thinking about flipping the company or going IPO or whatever. In that way, we get quite a number of those as well. So those are the few models of corporations try to reach to the startups.
Yeah, one other aspect which introduce, when we met last time, you were mentioning about Procter Gamble out-licensing some of their technologies, which is of not their current business priority. So, would you like to throw some light on how do the startups approach MNCs and look for some technology so that they could either do some white label production, or sometimes they get the license and they directly get into niche markets. So if you could also highlight the strategic intent of the companies, it would be great.
Yeah. So I have mentioned that P&G had at one time several years ago 7,000 R&D employees. They make a lot of inventions that may translate into innovations. All of them may or may not be of interest to P&G. So that means it's a very good quality innovations along with the IP, but we may decide not to go to market with them. I'll give you a classic example. P&G is a consumer product company. We are not a materials company. Let's say, so if somebody were to find a wonderful sustainable material for packaging, and that may require development, that may require investment, that may require manufacturing plants, etc. So P&G may not be willing to do it because we make consumer products, not packaging materials. Packaging materials is of interest to whole CPG companies. It's a much bigger. So we may not be willing to take the initiative in putting the capital to build the manufacturing. I'll give you a specific example. Today, most of the PET bottles, plastic bottles, that is comes with most of the beverages and shampoos and all these things, and those are made of PET. Those are recycled in the developed world. However, the caps associated with this, every bottle has a cap, either it's the screw cap or some other lid, etc. Those caps are made of polypropylene, not PET. Polypropylene today is not recycled. The main reason why polypropylene is not recycled because when you collect all these different caps and then try to mix it and then make a material, it becomes dark. It is only used for the garbage cans and park benches and things like that. So that's the reason why people do not recycle them in a commercially viable manner. So in fact, as a part of the sustainability program, P&G developed a method to get the polypropylene recycled and get virgin looking resin again. It's a transparent polypropylene resin. But we decided not to commercialize it because polypropylene is used by so many companies, and it is not in our best interest. We better put our effort in manufacturing the consumer goods, not the material. So what we did was we have identified some interesting parties who would like to license our technology and put a manufacturing plant, recycling plant, not only supply to P&G, supply to Coca-Cola and all other companies. So that way, it is a commercially viable mechanism where we benefit and the whole industry benefits. So that is an example why we try to take some of our innovations outside. That's one example. I'll give you a second example. One of the very well-known business model, which I have not seen in India, is adopted is trademark licensing. Technology licensing is one, trademark licensing is something else. For example, if somebody has a wonderful consumer product in India, let's say, I'll give you in the Indian context, somebody has a very authentic, 100% natural, very efficacious product based on Ayurveda ingredients. Okay, P&G does not have any Ayurveda products. If it is, let's say, a shampoo or a facial cream or a skin cream, something which is based on Ayurveda, if somebody were to have it, they may not have the brand like Olay, SK2, or any beauty P&G brands. They are very recognizable brands. So what we do is, if there is that's a good quality product, we do not mind offering licensing the P&G them their business, they because of the awareness, and then we benefit because our brand is available in more shelves in multiple categories. So there is a equity built associated with the brand. So the trademark licensing is we do quite a bit. We use Vicks brand. Vicks is a very well-known brand globally. And the Vicks vaporizers, Vicks humidifiers it is owned by some other company. We license the Vicks trademark to that company. Those are the ones end-to-end business. They are the ones who own us. They manage it. They give us a certain royalty to us. So you can imagine something like that. A small startup sometimes can benefit. Let's say somebody has a wonderful product. Their technology is great. Their product is great. The execution is wonderful, but they do not have the awareness and the right penetration, recognition in the consumer. So in that case, they can request P&G, would it be interested in giving one of the our brand name to use for them to build a business. So we do quite a bit of business that way. We get almost $100 million licensing revenues on a yearly basis with the simple trademark licensing.
Very, very good insights, Dr. Pramod, on that particular topic. And there is one other question by Sumed. So he's asking, what kind of operational quality control would Procter Gamble retain in such cases?
So that is something, it's a good question. Unless it meets the criteria of the standards of P&G, we will not be licensing our brand, because imagine some quality control issue, product has to be recalled, etc. And our brand equity is the one which get destroyed. That's why we tend to be extremely careful before we license those kind of trademarks. We come and check the manufacturing facilities whether they meet the quality assurance criteria, and they also toxicity and regulatory aspects of it. We check all those, and then only we give license to them if they were to be qualified. However, the product belongs to the people who is taking the license. We may stay a bit hands off, but at the same time, we look for the quality is an extremely important element of it because it directly impacts the equity of our brand.
Yeah, thank you. And Sumit has, I think he's raised his hand. Sumit, you may unmute your mic and ask your follow-on question or comment.
Thank you, sir. So my question was, while P&G might do a one-time sort of check of the processes and all of those things, would there be like a regular audit? I mean, I'm sure there would be. So is that? Yes, sir. That's my question.
Yeah. As a part of the licensing agreement, we keep the audit rights. And that means, in case if we have any suspicion that the product is not, quality is not maintained or regulatory issues are popping up, we keep the right to audit. And then we do in general around once every 3 years, 5 years, depending on how the things are going. We may choose to do the audit. Yeah, so that's the standard terms in those type of agreements.
So, is there any other question from audience? Okay. I think your discussions were quite comprehensive and you covered a wider ground. So this is not just going to be the end. In the future to our conferences and other possible avenues, so we are going to request you to come and share your knowledge once in a while. And there again, there are plenty of opportunities for startups to work. As you said, post your retirement, you are willing to spend 6 months in India, 6 months in the US, but you are also keen to engage with the startups. So whoever is interested from the audience to connect their startups, based on your expertise, we will be more than happy to do the bridging to take your advices. So before we conclude, I would again request you if you have some parting thoughts or concluding remarks, so that I can formally request Dr. Suresh, President of ISBA, to propose a vote of thanks. Dr. Reddy. Dr. Reddy, would you like to have some parting thoughts or closing comments?
My comments are, I think, the one thing I was very pleasantly surprised how the startup community is thriving in India. Until 12 years ago, most of the Indian community, when I talk about the venture capital and the incubators and the accelerators, etc., maybe 10, 12 to 15 years ago, it was many people used to look at me and say that strangely, that vocabulary was not even very popular. I was very pleasantly surprised in the past 4 years I've been interacting with the Indian startups, venture capitalists, and then so many successful unicorns coming out of things. And I was extremely pleased to note that. And in fact, I am myself have invested in a couple of venture capital firms, and then helping a couple of startups as well as an advisor and a board member. And anybody who's interested in learning a little bit more, would like to talk to me, please feel free to reach out. I think Dr. Balchan has shared my email address. In case if not, please do send an email address to others. So send an email, and if I have time and interest, if I have this expertise, I'll be glad to talk to you. So I welcome, and I would like to see that India thrive and then become a global player in this. And I also would like to let you know, I don't know, your audience probably know all these things already. I worked with Silicon Valley startups within Berlin, Israel, and then in the past 4 years, ever since I moved to Singapore, reached out to China, Australia, New Zealand, India, I was very pleased to know how well the Indian startup community is thriving and the overall ecosystem is developing. So that's one thing which I would like to make. The second thought I have is I would like to put a challenge in front of all your incubators and even entrepreneurs. Imagine there are so many brands coming everywhere in India, everywhere in the world, but I have not seen many authentic local Indian brands. Recently, there are a few. Tata probably is one very well-known name. Reliance is the other. There's a few brands like that is coming out, which is known to be from India. I think there is a humongous opportunity to be creating authentically Indian brands. So this is a challenge to the entrepreneurs and the incubators to encourage your founders to be thinking in those terms. I think there is a huge opportunity. Think about India as a brand. You know, there's a unique equity associated with this. How come there is no global Ayurveda brands? How come there is no authentic other Indian brands based on our tradition or our culture? So those are the two parting thoughts I have. And then thank you for giving me the opportunity to reach out to the community and to share whatever the experiences I have.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. It was wonderful having you this morning. We would like to be in touch with you in the coming days. May I request Dr. Suresh Kumar, President ISBA, to propose a word of thanks and also share his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Pramod, for sharing your late evening with us. It's late evening for you, and it's early morning for us. And that's how the Open Innovation Network has been connected. And thank you for sharing the nuances and working with the corporate, what kind of preparedness the startup should have. And your insights helps us to prepare our startups when they are going to engage with the corporates. And our incubation managers usually periodically will receive the P&G problem statement, and but most of them will not be knowing where from these statements are coming. And these statements have been received through Pramod for the last 2-3 years. Whenever there is an announcement for problem statement, Pramod used to share with us, and we have shared with the community. So we look forward to your to have a continuous engagement with you. And thank you for your willingness to work with our Indian incubation. Thank you, Pramod. And I also thank our fellow managers and friends for joining. This is the first assignment for you today morning. The day has started with Mr. Pramod, and collectively we'll try to have some Indian brands globally. That will through our hope our incubator managers will accept your challenge and we'll take forward. Thank you, Pramod, and thank you, Bala, for connecting with Pramod and making this event happening. And I also thank all the incubation managers who have joined this event. Thank you, Ananda.
Well, thanks to everybody. Namaste.
Thank you.
Nah,